Hey guys, it's Graham. This is my review of The Dinosaur Hunter, a novel by Homer Hickam. Yes, that Homer Hickam, the main character from October Sky, a man who worked for decades for NASA. And I didn't know this until just last year, a man who was also an accomplished novelist and writer. So I was looking for comics about Turok the Dinosaur Hunter, which I had heard existed, and I remembered playing the Nintendo game at a friend's house back in ye olden times. So I thought I would look those up, and instead the library gave me this, and it was mainly the author's name that grabbed my interest. I thought I'll eventually get around to it. So I reviewed this book over on Substack. You can check the description for the link. But I'm not going to be reading that review into this video here. I'm just going to talk offhand while I drive home after a crappy day at work. It's books that make bad days just a little bit better. Also, you can check the description for a link to my second channel, Graveyard Graham's Midnight Ride. That's where I've decided to start publishing my videos that are kind of off topic, that aren't really about books or writing so much. Anyway, this novel, I believe it came out in 2010, and the audiobook might have come out later. I found conflicting dates for it, but it's around 15 years old. And I would best describe this as Longmire Light. It's set in the Mountain West, in the rural areas. There are modern-day cowboys in it. And there's an interesting cross-section and intersection of strange goings-on. Our main character is a guy named Mike Wire, who used to be a detective for the LAPD. And well, he was an officer and then he became a detective later. He got shot in the line of duty, decided he didn't want to play that game anymore, and using his cash out, his pension, I guess, he moved out to middle of nowhere, Montana, got hired on as a ranch hand, and decided to learn how to be a cowboy. And he's been at this for several years since. When the book starts, he's working for the Coulter family. The husband, Bill Coulter, has been dead for about 5 years. His widow, Jeanette Coulter, still runs the show, and their teenage son, Ray Coulter, is helping his mom. Mike has feelings, stirrings, as it were, for Jeanette, but he's not going to make a move on her just because, out of respect for Bill and stuff. Also, he doesn't think that she would reciprocate, so there's complication there. And it's in this situation that we find him when the story begins. Now, Ray, the son, wrote a piece for his high school about some fossils that he found on the family ranch out in middle of nowhere, Montana. The ranch is called Square Sea. And he did a really good job with this paper. His teacher published it online. It caught the attention of a paleontologist who is well-known and well-traveled, but also an ethical paleontologist, a guy who doesn't buy and sell bones. He preserves them for the science. And he comes to the ranch and he wants to check out this potentially juvenile T-Rex fossil that he found, and go exploring from there. However, shortly after this paleontologist arrives, animals start dying in brutal and unusual ways, and then there are a couple of murders, and, well, as it happens when things pop up that are valuable in the middle of nowhere, power players start making moves to acquire them, even unexpected ones like Russian mobsters and such. Like I said, I described this book as kind of a Longmire Light because it's a police procedural of a sort in the Mountain West, in cowboy country. There was even a Longmire book that came on a couple of years after this particular Homer Hickam novel, where Longmire had to deal with somebody finding a very complete T-Rex skeleton on their land, and suddenly that person ended up dead, and Walt had a murder mystery on his hand, as he often does. So it's a compelling premise, and Homer Hickam does a good job with this one. I don't know what the caliber of his other writing is, what's the tenor of it, what kind of stuff does he normally write, if his other books are murder mysteries. But for the most part, he does this one really, really well. I will say, in retrospect, looking back on it, that the whole murder and mystery aspect of it takes a backseat to other goings on in the story, but it's there throughout. The book isn't really mainly about that. It's really about the lives of the people on this ranch and the paleontologist and his assistants as they come in and go through the day-to-day work of figuring out what to do with this fossil when they find it, and the small town politics of this little Montana place, and federal intervention with the fact that the Bureau of Land Management owns a fair amount of land that these ranchers are on. They've just been leasing it for decades and in some cases a century. It's a nice snapshot of these small towns and the stuff that they deal with just as a matter of course in their day-to-day life. But the mystery and the murder side of it all, and the way that it connects to the fossil dig and stuff, it all comes together very satisfactorily in the end. The characters they're a little bit better than caricatures of small town folks. However, you can easily describe them as such. Jeanette is the tough, no nonsense widow ranch boss, and Mike is the guy who wasn't born to this kind of work but found himself in it and likes it and sticks with it. And Ray is the teenage boy who thinks that ranch work is noble and he wants to keep up with it, but he's in love with a girl who wants to get out of this small town, and she loves him back, but she doesn't know what their future is going to be if she runs off to college and such. I've never seen a single episode of Yellowstone, but in surfing through YouTube shorts and Instagram reels, clips of the show popped up from time to time. And if I remember right, or if I understand right, there was a storyline similar to that, again, kind of like that Longmire book. It came along a few years after this book was written. My rule on that kind of stuff is that writers can come up with similar ideas without being aware of somebody else coming across it, which is fine. It's just you only get so many permutations of credible and rational ideas with a particular setting and set of tools. And in this case, what happens when you get people that have grown up around a certain lifestyle in a certain place and they're not always on the same page? Well, what's that going to entail? It's going to entail one of them wanting to do the work and the other one wanting to get out. And then you can add the conflict of, but they really like each other and they're not both going in the same direction. So it works. I enjoyed the book. There was some language in it. There was there might have been like 2 or 3 F-bombs, a couple of other words. Mike is a really good, flawed character. He's competent and capable as a detective, but he's not a detective or a member of any police force when this story sets out. He's just a guy who knows how to do that kind of work. And when people start turning up dead and livestock starts turning up dead, he proactively starts employing those tools that he has, that experience that he has, to do what he can to protect kind of this town and this way of life and the things that matter to the people that he cares about. And that's good. As far as his flaws, he's a bit of a drinker. He's not necessarily a drunkard, but he does drink pretty much daily. And even though he's quote-unquote in love with Jeanette, he's a bit of a skirt chaser. And he's even been known, and this factors into the story, to get involved with a woman if she's married, even though he's not. He's got a couple of failed marriages under his belt. These are behaviors and such that are not uncommon amongst retired LEOs. They live on the hard edge of life and they end up living life the hard way. And he makes decisions that you don't always find commendable, but when it comes time to do something that nobody else can do, he takes the initiative to do it. And that's what makes him a compelling character to read. Flawed, I wouldn't necessarily say morally gray. He's got his baggage, and he is able to transcend that for the well-being of those he cares about. So overall, it was good. I thought the paleontology talk was really interesting, and whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. I don't read a lot of hard sci-fi, but the details that Homer Hickam put in there, it at least smacks of authenticity, we'll put it that way. when the paleontologist is talking about the types of bones they found, how the fossils get that way, what proper excavation techniques might be, and so on and so forth. So, hey, if anybody's got more experience with paleontology and wants to give the thumbs up or thumbs down on this book, let me know. But I'd give it an endorsement. I would give it a deserved 4 stars. And I feel pretty confident about that number. So check out The Dinosaur Hunter by Homer Hickam. And don't protest oil, because that's dumb. Once again, check the description for links to the Substack and to the other channel. Until next time, drive safe. See you out there.